It is hot out there, right? Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. We are not in any of those rooms today because we're talking about the heat wave. We're talking about as the heat goes over us across the nation, life can turn up heat too. It's 116 on that Pacific Northwest. Scary times. So sometimes we can turn on the AC, sometimes we can find shade, but in life, it doesn't work that way. For the heat, you can escape it. For life, sometimes it doesn't provide that when it dials up the heat. So what do? We've been talking about it last week, but now we're going into this week talking about how other people have dealt with the heat. Because you can hear about my heat all day long, but I can jibber jabber all day. I want to bring those subject matter experts that have gone over and thrived going past the heat. So our next guest, which we're about to bring to the floor, is a determined lady, Tammi Moses. She's going to go over and share her story on going into the well to get the healing. So I'm going to bring her forward, and then we're going to start letting her jibber jabber for good things and not just me for just crazy things. Hey, Tammi, thanks for joining.
Hi, Daniel. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So let's go jump right into it because it's a heated conversation anyway. So you have gone over and been in the military. You've had your civilian transition. You've had corporate jobs, and that's just a lot in general for that. But then you added the past. So we'd love for you to share a story on how you found the well for healing.
Well, I would say that it was an accidental find that I needed to heal. Like, I didn't really realize how much my past and the things I had experienced impacted me. And I didn't really connect the dots for quite a while. And I was thinking about the show today, and I was like, the first time I ever sought some kind of therapy or counseling, I was active duty, but I had a friend who said, "Hey, have you ever talked to anyone about growing up in the hoarded home? The fact that your brother has a disability, have you ever talked to anyone?" I'm like, "No." And his suggestion was that I should speak to someone, but that he would figure out who that best person would be. And so the first time that I spoke to someone, it was basically, I would say, off the record. And part of the issue that I'm still seeing, and that was in the 90s, right? And now we're in 2021, and there's still this huge disconnect between the fact that our mental health is just as important as the rest of our health. And a lot of people don't seek the care they need because they're afraid of the repercussions. And that was a brief stint for me when I spoke to a counselor, but it was the beginning of me recognizing that there was a lot more that I'd experienced in my life that I needed to work through. And if we fast forward like to 2010, that's when I actually did start seeking an actual therapist that I could continue working with on a regular basis. And that was the starting point of me recognizing that I needed to deal with trauma, that I had to work on my own anxiety issues, and I had to start really becoming who I was meant to be. And I don't really think that started to happen until I started to really reconnect with all parts of me. And it was a process for sure.
Mm-hmm. So that started in 2010. How did you survive during that time? Because going to counseling, you just don't go in and say like, "Hey, it's totally healed." They kind of go over and treat it like, "Hey, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off the wound and you're going to start bleeding." They say, "Hey, make it another week, put on a tourniquet on this thing." And you're like, "I don't need a tourniquet. I need healing." And then you come back in and then they rip it off again. And then like, and you go back week after week. So how did you survive during that time of taking, quote unquote, that Band-Aid off and then putting something new back on?
Well, and that's a good analogy where you are kind of ripping it off and examining it and kind of stitching it up a little or just slapping a little bit on there to go the next week. And if you're in a situation and you are going through some sort of therapy, or if you say it's easy, I would say you're not doing it right. Because the way I survived it was in between the time I would have homework, and I write a lot already, but part of my homework was to work through whatever issue we had talked about, or think about it and reflect on how did that situation harm me or hurt me, or how did it benefit me? And then I would bring in some of that journaling and be like, okay, this is, what I thought about and what I cried about and what I screamed about in the past week. And it was a way to stay connected to, I think, the pain, but the healing throughout that time. And I would say having a person who understood what I was talking about in a human way made a big difference. And I also started to really come out of my shell during that time, because what prompted me to kind of seek this was essentially the ending of a marriage. And it turned into, okay, yes, this is a necessary situation that I need to complete this decision, but I also need to heal myself. And so I decided to continue that process for a good 2 more years after that decision. And it became a survival mechanism in a way to continue this therapy, because I had gotten to the point where I had been ripping it off. And you get to the point where you're like, okay, I've done a lot of this work. Now what? What's the next level? And so I started to read additional books. I started to really dive into it. And the weird part is like, I worked full time. I was going to college. I was going to the therapist. Like I really didn't have a lot of time to think sometimes outside of very specific activities, and so I feel like having some positive distraction was also a survival piece that really helped me not be super focused on my own trouble, but also it helped me start to see that I didn't want to become a therapist myself, which was kind of why I was going to college, was thinking I'm going to do that. And it's not because it's not beneficial. It's just that I decided I wanted to do something different in life. And surviving it, survival is a great tool. It's a great word to describe what you go through when you are working through whatever challenges you have. And getting through that is what lets you start to look at, hey, I'm going to survive. Hey, I'm going to live. Hey, maybe I could use this to benefit somebody else down the line. And that I feel like then, and even now, when I reflect on a lot of this, it's because it's fertilizer to grow a garden. And otherwise, I would still question, what is the purpose of this pain?
And that's a good segue into our next question, because, you can go over and you till the soil, or you think of the claw, that 90s thing that cultivated, loosened, aerated, and weeded all your garden and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you didn't do anything with that soil, nothing goes over and grows. So what did you change to start thriving instead of just leaving the soil just there to survive?
Well, I feel like I started to be in touch with the fact that I needed to have boundaries. I needed to be able to say no, or without feeling guilty about it. And the word no is a complete sentence. And the point of saying no is that so you can say yes to other good, positive things. And had a lot to do with determining what I would tolerate and what I wouldn't personally, as well as in a job. And I started to shift how I was thinking about it. And that mindset shift was a huge piece. And it was an aspect of, no, you will not talk to me this way. Yes, this is something I need. And it's reminding me that self-care is a huge piece of this. And when I first started to seek that self-care aspect, you were allowed to use like sick leave to get a massage, to go to a counselor, to do this, the same as if you were going for a medical appointment. You were allowed to use this, but there was like this misconception about whether or not you could do that. And I'm like, well, I looked up the rules and this says that I can. And so I started to talk about it as a self-care piece instead of, oh, I'm sick and I don't feel well. I'm doing this so I will be well and not feel sick. And so I started to talk about it that way. And I noticed people around me starting to shift what they were saying. And some people started to explore what they could do for self-care and wellness. And I started to really hone in on, what do I need? I need to take a walk. I need to work out. I need to drink water. I should deal with this other medical issue I'm having. And so being very focused on what you need to be okay, is a shift that you can make when you start looking at thriving. And in addition, after a period of time, I also looked at starting my own business, because I felt like I was too contained in someone else's work environment. And I had a coworker say to me one day, you're wasting your talent in this cubicle. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, look, it's kind of unexpected, right? And she's like, look, you know how to facilitate. You've done this. You've done project management. There's all these things. She's like, I've worked with you. I facilitate. Like, you need to explore what else you should be doing. And that conversation really made me start thinking about the fact that I was not thriving in that situation. Like, I had tapped out salary. I had tapped out promotion. The next level was, I had to move at that time. And I was like, I don't want to move. And so it really did shift to me to start going to conferences, for me to re-embrace my veteran status, if you will. And that is what shifted it for me to start looking at, what does it mean to thrive for me?
And that was transformational. I remember meeting you in 2019 before we had this mask-epidemic that we had for the past year. But it was very exciting just to go over and see you blossom, and all the other people that just came out of the shell, like Richard Kaufman, yourself, and everybody else, just like going over and ripping off the Band-Aid, in a sense, of the corporate job and jumping in and now seeing that transformation. So what did you learn, like one or two things in that season specifically that stuck with you, that you either keep reinforcing yourself or going over and you pass on to others?
Well, like you were saying, when we met in 2019, there are so many people there that I had been connected with for a good couple of years virtually that I had not met. And getting to that was getting out of my comfort zone. And so the first thing I would say is, you have to get out of your own way. And that often means getting out of where you're comfortable. It means taking a risk. It means just moving forward, even if you can't see the whole picture. Like, you're driven. I felt very driven to go to that conference in DC, and I pieced it together. Here's my flight. Here's my Airbnb. But every single one of those things for me was getting out of my comfort zone, instead of just saying, oh, never mind, I don't need to go, and I traveled there without a phone because my phone died the morning of. And so that was a whole weird experience. Everybody has a phone, right?
Yeah.
I had a laptop so I could kind of connect. And then when I got to DC, I said, hey, people, I need a phone. And so I got help to get that. And even in that, it was an up level into a better phone. I could do Facebook Lives. So the loss of the phone was actually a benefit. So getting out of your comfort zone is definitely something you have to get comfortable doing. And also, you really need to focus on your mindset about you personally and your value and the value you bring to the table. And I'm reminded that our ability to see our value impacts our ability to ask for money, or to place some kind of monetary or value on the work and the things that we do. And until you start getting that right, you really struggle. And I have struggled because I didn't recognize that essentially money is a tool, and we all need it. And it's not an evil thing. Like, you can do evil things, but you can do good things too if you have those tools. So I really would say, get out of your own way and work on your mindset. And it could be something as simple as, I am smart instead of I am stupid, or it can be that simple, and you can start shifting into that more positive perception of yourself.
You know, the funniest thing is that I didn't even think you struggled with those things at all. Like everybody came and I thought I was the person that was struggling, but I think we always need to remember everybody is trying to be like the wallflower at the dance, and we're all standing at the wall and we all think that we're confident, but we never stood up to go over and go and dance and everything else for it. We think everybody else is dancing, but everybody else is doing the same thing and we're all standing on the wall, and then we get together and we're like, oh, we're cool, we're not as that. So I didn't see any of that at all. I was thinking, I'm like, I'm the outsider coming in. All these confident, cool, collected military influencers are coming in, yourself and everybody else. And they're like the heroes that I'm like admiring on. And then they're saying, oh, you're doing amazing things. I said, have you seen my numbers on Facebook? I mean, I don't know. I'm like, or I hear all these people watching in the background. So it was just seeing how you guys like gleaned in that season. So even if you were faking it, you were doing it so well, I couldn't see through it. So I give you kudos, even if you were working through it while you're at MIC. So into that question now, how do you equip yourself for the future heat waves? Because unfortunately, we wish we could avoid those heat waves. We know like the Pacific Northwest is almost over. It's getting down to 60 in the next couple of days, but our own personal heat waves. Yeah, finally. So, but how do we, if it comes again, just like, you know, these storms that come up in the nation in the sense of our weather forecast and our personal forecast, how are you equipping yourself for the next future heat wave?
Well, and I'd like to mention, like you said, like Richard Kaufman and Annette and Robert Garcia and so many people. I mean, Kurt Balish and Daniel Curry. Like I got to talk to so many people that I had supported and connected me over that time. And so one of the ways that I continue to protect my mindset is to stay connected with those people that believe in your mission, that see the value you're bringing, that will hop on at a moment's notice if they possibly can to help you with something. And I would say people talk about building your network, but really I think it's it's building relationships that matter, and both personally and professionally. And for me, a lot of the connections I have they're basically my veteran family, my veteran community, and they are the people that I tend to rely on to either laugh or complain or bounce ideas off of. And so I think protecting your circle is a very valuable way to protect your own mindset. And for me, I do things like walk in my yard barefoot every chance I get, which is very grounding. I live close to the beach. I try to get to the beach a few times a week just to walk down there. I need a lot of quiet time. As a person, I enjoy some silence. And so that helps me prepare for the next wave of talking or crisis management or whatever thing is coming up. And if I don't do that, I can feel myself get rolling off kilter. And I also journal and write a lot. And for me, that is a way I've always gotten things out since I was about 13, but it also often leads right into the next thing, whether it's a blog post or, oh, this is a podcast idea, or, oh, this is a person I need to connect with. And something I'm working on personally is that follow-up, that follow-through more quickly, because I've really struggled with it. And I find that happens a lot when we're juggling things, but it's something I'm working on now, because I see not only for myself, but other people I work with or collaborate with, that figuring out that follow-through piece is often where we lose our clients. And that means we aren't positively impacting them. And it also means you're losing money. And I have a theory that the more you have, the more you can share, the more you can do. And
that's awesome.
It's moving to abundance. It's moving to there's enough for everyone. How can we make sure that what we are providing is positively impactful? And so I just feel like that self-care, that self-awareness is really how you can keep yourself from catching on fire on the next heat wave.
No, I totally agree. And you gave me a friendly reminder about the whole journaling thing. I haven't done that like in 2 decades because I like was self-deprecating myself all the time. I'm like, I suck and I do all this stuff. And you write it and then you reread it and you're like, why am I crying all the
Right.
time?
Like,
Yeah. So, but it is good if you're writing positive affirmations and you're going over and doing that. And that's a good equipping in there. Not everybody wants to write their own positive affirmations, but when we write stuff down and then we speak it, it becomes reality. So that was a great reminder for me and hopefully a great reminder for our audience. So going in that, what resources do you have in your tool belt that you go over and you equip yourself on a day? We talked about the beach, we talked about the journaling, but is there any specific resources, friends, or maybe veteran resources that you access in your tool belt that you use on a regular basis when these heat waves come in?
so I have found it very helpful to be involved in groups that meet on a regular basis, and it gives me a place to be, but also it gives me connections that I feel we really need as a humans, but also as a person with a business or a person who's trying to grow something. It's really important, I think, to be involved with someone who is higher up on the on the direction you're going. And maybe there are people that you can bring with you, and then people that are kind of right where you're at, so that you're growing together. And so two of the places that I am at consistently is the Warrior Council, which is through Vetpreneur Tribe, as well as Zone of Action, which is Justin Charpentier. And so those are two mastermind groups that meet, and that keeps me accountable to a place. Another thing that I'm working on is with Natan Bradbury around embracing your feminine, masculine sides, and the fact that we all have both aspects, and knowing which is the best to use in whichever scenario you're in has really helped me. And boundaries. Oh my goodness. Knowing what your limits are, knowing when to say no, and not having to give a long set paragraph as to why, knowing when to say yes, and paying attention to how much attention are you giving to your loved ones? How much attention are you giving to your business? Are you able to step away? I constantly think about it, but I still have to step away because disconnecting from technology is really key for me, because I deal with the hoarding situation, with my parent, where I grew up. I deal with that on a very personal way. I talk about it on a podcast. I talk about it with other people. I write about it. And so sometimes I have to totally disengage and look at, cat videos, and then go for a walk with no technology. Like recently I did this. I was like, my phone was so low. I'm like, there's no point in me even carrying it, right? I left it. I charged it. I left for an entire hour with no technology, and I lived. And so that's a reminder. Some of us know that we didn't always have it in our pocket, and so I feel like getting back to some kind of natural state where I don't have that electric wave constantly around me is really valuable, to embrace that idea that we don't have to be plugged in 24/7, because we suffer, but so does our family. And I had my boyfriend say one day, you're in that phone a lot. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I am in that phone a lot, and I need to knock it off, because how much attention, what am I missing out on because I'm focused on that instead of over here? And so I think the ability to disengage from your work, whatever it is a one way for you to re-engage with the people in your life.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge to go over and bring. That was a great resource and everything else. So let's go talk about, before we end the show, about the Hoarding Solution podcast, because I want people to go over and connect with you. I want people to go and be free. So if you can tell us more about the Hoarding Solution podcast.
So I've never thought personally I would talk about hoarding in a public way. And so that has been an evolution over the past 7 years to where I am now. And the reason I started this podcast is because there's a lot of people that grew up in this situation. There's a lot of people that deal with trauma, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And a lot of those things come under hoarding issues. And so hoarding itself is the manifestation of a problem. It isn't necessarily the problem, although it's something that must be dealt with. And from the perspective of the fact that I grew up in that situation, and that I deal with it now as the adult kid, I found that we needed a voice. We needed a stronger way to be heard. And so I come at it from a more humane perspective, and I've dropped into something called Tuesdays with Tammi, where it's kind of my little 10-minute little perspective. But I also do interviews with people who are willing to tell their story or talk about their book or business, and kind of like we were talking about, how do you emerge? How do you emerge from your story, your trauma, your whatever you've gone through? You connect, you transform, you emerge. And that is basically the journey I went on. I found a way to connect. I transformed my thinking. I got out of my shell, out of my comfort zone. And that is what helped me begin to emerge into the person I am today. But I'm still constantly a work in progress. I don't have it all figured out. But I definitely have more figured out than I did, 10 years ago. So.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the metamorphosis to the butterfly. Even though the butterfly is brand new and looks all sparkling wonderful, it doesn't get out the first time and say like, all right, I know how to navigate this world. I know how to fly and everything else. It's over time that the butterfly, and we don't even know if butterflies are confident about flying like years later. We don't even know if they live years later. I'm not a person that's into nature and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure in that short lifespan that I come to the realization that I'm a great flyer now. So we're always growing and everything else. So that's really cool. And you guys all can catch this out on this link below at Anchor. Really great app to go over and distribute your podcast. And then this link over here, I'm assuming this is your business card. I've seen a lot of these lately, these Linktree links. Is that like a business card for everybody to connect with you?
It's basically a way to list all your links easily. So if someone were to go to that link, they'd be able to find the podcast, the website, the groups, all the things that I'm doing. And I have a website, thehoardingsolution.com as well, where you can find a lot of that. But it's actually a very good tool if you're trying to consolidate some of the different things you're doing, and have ways for people to reach you easily.
That's awesome. So that's really cool. So everybody can just go to linktree.com, Linktree/the hoarding solution. So that's awesome. I think I'm gonna have to get one of those because I have too many things I'm doing nowadays and I just need to consolidate. So that's really cool. Someone might have asked me to be on a perspective interview. They want the current events and they want a white male perspective and also a black woman's perspective and other people. So I'm like, I'm getting too busy. I'm doing so many things. So I think I'm going to take your Linktree idea and go do that and de-hoard my life and make it one link instead of many. So that's fantastic. So I want to thank you, Tammi, for going over and joining our special series about escaping the heat on War Hero to Superhero this month. And everybody that's going over and watching, no matter watching in the live or the replay, when we usually do interviews, we say, hey, a 3-second view goes over and counts as a view. And what is a 3-second view? You take your handy dandy phone, which you're already carrying and shaking in your hand every day because we're so addicted, and you actually click the button in the video. Because if you're watching the auto caption, it doesn't show a view. So take your finger, go over and point at it, open it for 3 seconds, that gives a view. What does that go over and do? It gives Tammi a view. So if you like Tammi and you support what she's doing, click on that video and do the view. If she gets the most views, and we're going to extend this a little bit for 5 days. So hold on, 5 days. So a 3-second click for 5 days. I normally don't do this hand that often. Then if she gets the most views compared to the other people, then she gets uplifted to War Hero Superhero, which is airing on Legacy TV, which we have that on our website, and we're distributing through 213 countries, and we're getting in more apps each and every day. We have rumors that Roku accepted us, but we'll find out in a few days. So we're getting bigger. So we'll take our message forward. Now, if you really want, this is the other thing we're also doing with escaping the heat. We want Tammi to escape the heat of paying for something. So if she wants a free commercial from us, that's going to be aired not just on our podcast, but on our television show for an entire month. She all has to get is 5,000 views in 5 days. So that 3-second click gives her a view. She gets 5K of views, and this is in the next 5 days. Then she'll get a commercial, and we air that for the entire month. She gets the whole spotlight. So Her hoarding
Wow.
solution will be sponsoring this. So the ball is in your court, Tammy, and your friends going over and watching by clicking it. So please, if you think you're like, I did it. If you didn't click the button and you were watching the auto caption in the bathroom, you're like, this was amazing. You didn't actually watch it. You actually have to click it on the phone. Most people don't understand that. Like, I've had people stalk me. I watch your stuff all the time. I never see you there. You're not clicking the button, so you're not there. So if you want Tammy to get that free commercial or to get uplifted to the TV show for an episode on War Hero Superhero, it's the most views in 5 days. So from today's Tuesday, so it got until Saturday. The same thing with the commercial, 5K views in 5 days. Then she gets to bring us a commercial, and we air it for the entire month. We'll have a whole entire month dedicated to the hoarding solution commercial right on the end of our show, each and every episode. So, Tammy, the ball's in your court. Any last wisdom you want to go over and distribute before we close out?
Well, thank you so much for having me and talking with me. And I would say that if you are in any kind of extreme clutter hoarding situation, please know you are not alone. You are not. There are people that are here that are aware and working diligently to bring more awareness to this situation. So there is hope, and just know that that you can survive this.
That's awesome. And we hope that not just survival, but thrival. So, I mean, thrival.
Thrival. I like it. Thrival.
I made it up right now. That's my word. Thrival. Everybody gets 1% royalties that uses it. So we will close out War Hero to Superhero with that, because you don't want me stuttering. So we'll all have a good evening.